Hello, everyone. This is Denley McIntosh. I am the CEO and Chief Coach of RenewIQ Consulting. And today we're going to be talking about holistic leadership, leadership that matters to the whole person.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we dive deep into the minds and stories of industry leaders transforming workplaces and redefining success. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I have the pleasure of introducing someone who's not just riding the waves of workplace culture, but is actually teaching others how to surf them with grace and intention. Now, Denley, how are you doing, my man?
Hey, Prosper, I'm doing well. Thanks. Looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I'm really excited about what we're about to embark on, because for those that are meeting Denley for the very first time, I want you to know that he's not your average culture strategist. He's an award-winning culture changer, keynote speaker, and author who's here to share his wisdom on navigating the dynamic tides of human behavior in the workplace. I know in the last couple of years, or last 4 or 5 years, things have shifted in the way people approach work and the physical environment that, creates the economy. So, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by this shifting culture at work, or if you've actually struggled to keep up with the team engaged with your operations aligned in the same place, I'd really encourage you to stick around, because Denley's unique blend of empathy, strategy, and middle brain thinking will inspire you to rethink how you approach your team dynamics, inclusion, and leadership. There's also a few things that we're going to be learning about Denley's past and how he got to be in the position that he is in. And we're also going to be exploring, his journey, his strategies for creating positive workplaces, and the lessons that he's learned from helping organizations ride these unpredictable waves of workplace change. So I can't wait to just jump in. Now, Denley, we've already welcomed you to the show. Your career has been around creating positive workplaces and transforming cultures. First of all, what inspired you to pursue this path?
Yeah, you know what? I always enjoyed being able to speak to the hearts, the minds of people. We have this saying. I do work with my wife, and we talk about head, heart, hands, the 3 H's. And I've always enjoyed doing that as a facilitator and speaker. But when George Floyd was murdered, that really took off in 2020. I've always done the work and trying to bring people together and speak to that. But then I felt that there was an pressing need that we're seeing, or we are seeing in the workplace, of creating the space of belonging, creating the space of understanding. That's when it really took off, and I started to get requests to be able to speak on the topic, because someone who had the lived experience, but be able to speak in a corporate environment with my knowledge and strategy and policy, and then being able to work that out on the implementation as a project manager. I brought all these sort of gamut skills together, and with the lived experience and the cultural intelligence. That's the key piece, because we live in a global environment, global world, to prosper. You know this. And there was this reckoning of, like, you need to understand who you're working with. We're no longer going to take this from you any longer. And leaders say, what? We thought you always liked us. No, we didn't like you, but now we're letting you know. And so that's where they kind of brought me and say, how do we get people to really like each other, trust each other, so we can work together?
Absolutely. And I think a position like that should not be taken lightly, because this is people's livelihoods at stake. And you obviously have introduced, the movement of the BLM with, the passing on of George Floyd. But what sort of environments had you been sort of working in, and, like that would have then prompted you to say, you know what, I think this is my call to action?
Environment. Before I answer, can you say more about the environment? What do you mean?
Absolutely.
Sure,
Obviously in the workplaces that you would have been working What was it like? Just so that it would have then got you to see that certain things needed a bit of change because fish do not see the water that they swim in.
Yeah, absolutely. So whether be in the private industry or public uh, government spaces, not for profit, uh, and even the charity spaces, you saw this ubiquitous trend where those who were deemed to be racialized or minorities uh, were saying, "We do not feel that we're part of this team. We do not feel that you take us seriously. We do not feel that there is a partnership here and that you are blowing smoke." And the movement of post George Floyd and beyond just BLM, sure, that was part. Actually, BLM preceded George Floyd, right? It obviously got more traction, but you saw this overwhelming swell. Even people who are indigenous in our country out in Canada, you saw this galvanization, so to speak, that we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to take you mistreating us because you say you can. And that's where you kind of see in every industry. You'd be surprised, even in churches, you saw the same thing. You saw the same kind of movement. So I've been speaking in all those places because the issues are similarly. Obviously, there's different themes, there's different missions, there's different, but the how of relating to each other doesn't change. We want to be understood. We want to be treated with dignity. We want to know that you hear us, and we want to know, can we trust you as a leader? And we were seeing that the movement of the workplace, Prosper, is the movement from the industrial age to the wisdom age. And that's not my term. I got it from Stephen Covey's Eighth Habit. He talked about the wisdom age. There's really the understanding of going beyond the technology to now understanding how do we work together? What are the innovative ways as leaders to be able to use our wisdom to connect with people in the way that gets the most out of them? And that is something that I've always leaned on in terms of the knowledge. And when I enter into a workplace, I say to myself, somewhere in this workplace, someone feels disconnected. Somewhere in this workplace, there's a leader that doesn't truly understand their people. How can I help them to better listen to those who are on the ground?
Absolutely. I mean, thank you so much for opening us up to that, level of discourse. Now, Denley, you would also understand during the pandemic, a lot of shifts happened. People started working from home, and people started
Yeah.
connecting remotely, and the culture obviously shifted. But there's also something I'm not sure if it happened in North America there, where so many people started quitting, and most of those people that were quitting were leaders from prior generations. And when people came back to work, the leaders that were now in place were just people that were elevated just because they were high performers. And that has created such a big disconnect in the workplace environment because, like you said, there's a leader who's not being able to actually rally the troops. I don't know if you can maybe comment on that sort of observation.
Yeah, there's a few things that are going on. I always say like in the history of work, there has not been a time like this. You know, I do when I do a lot of talks, I study ancient history. Part of my background is studying Western history, uh, Afro-Asiatic history a little bit, and that's because again, the work that I do is I study theology, I study philosophy, and understanding the nature of work, we move from this sort of different levels, whether it be from a slave-based economy to a king serf economy to uh, other measure of economy to where we now are moving to this sort of employer-employee relationship, and now you're moving to it's employer-employee, but we want to be seen as equals or partners whether legally that may not hold up, but practically speaking, that's what people want to feel. there's been no time in the in our history of work where work was like that. And we are now discovering this is what it means to what does it mean to get the most out of our team members? Now, I'm very careful not to use the word human resource or even human capital because that's out of the time of the industrial age where we saw people as just simply things, cogs in the wheel. Now, I may use the term human resource only because I don't mean in terms of people being resources, and I may just it slip because it's subconscious. But I want people to understand that part of the cultural transformation is not to see human resources or human capital. We may want to use the word talent, but at least we want to say team members because we want to humanize it. And what we're seeing that high performers fall many times in the whole industrial age. How many wheels, how many wickets can I move down the production line? That's a high performer. Today's high performers cannot, at least as a leader, treat other people as human resources or chattel. If you're going to be a high performer today, is how do I get things done and humanize the people that I'm working with at the same time? That's the wisdom. That is what the challenge is because people are now saying in a very democratic society and power has been democratized. If I feel that you are taking advantage of me, guess what? I'm going to quiet quit on you. Guess what? I'm going to find the next person next door and I'm going to leave. And so high performance today is not the same, should not be defined the same way as it was yesteryear. When my dad and my mother who worked and had people just scolded them and they say, yes, sir, yes, massa. Those days are done, at least where I see. We
Mm.
want people now to say that I am your leader, I am your manager, but this the idea of servant leadership comes into mind. This like, how can I make your life better? How can I make your life better so we can all get what we want? I deliver for my boss, you can deliver for your family.
Mm. Absolutely. Now, that obviously presents a can of worms in and of itself. I mean,
Hmm.
we now live in a global village, Denley,
Yeah.
and right now you're in Canada, I'm in Australia, and obviously it's just we're just having a chat, and that's what it's like in different offices and rooms right now where people are cross culturally speaking, and that
Yeah.
now that pollination is also going to leave a lasting impact on the people that are now involved. Maybe a salesperson sees something in a German office, and they now want to come and demand it off of their employer, and that sort of presents that discontinuity or discrepancy. Everyone is now overwhelmed with this rapid cultural shift. How do you then help organizations ride this wave rather than fear it? Because what is now being presented is there's these demands that are being put across, and maybe the leaders are just afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? There's a point of diminishing returns, right? And sorry if I may be traumatizing some of your listeners if math wasn't their strong point, but I said point of diminishing returns. There's a point where we can be seeking production to the very point where we will get to an apex where actually the more effort, the more grind, the more push, the more let's be number one will actually create a cascade where you shut people down and people start to, again, quiet quit,
Mm.
look for other opportunities, or sabotage you or sabotage the organization. And why I'm bringing that up because we're seeing this tension, right? The baby boomers, Gen X, have a different view of work for compared to the millennials and Gen Zs, and then the Gen Alphas that are coming up, they will have a different. So you see this sort of culture clash, generation class of Gen millennials and Gen Zs. It's not about loyalty. It's about how do you take care of the world around you, which includes me. How do you do justice and fairness? Whereas the generation of Generation X and baby boomers, It's the loyalty and getting things done and put up with it. Shut up and dribble, someone said. The Gen A, the Gen Alphas, the Gen Zs, the Millennials. No, 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 no. And so you're gonna see this sort of cultural clash, and then is and we're in a capitalistic society. What does capitalism look like, where people are saying care and compassion are important? Now, granted, I remember a, I remember an old boss of mine said, everyone in university begins as some kind of a socialist, and then when they see their first paycheck, they become a capitalist when they leave school. So it could be that the very fact that the older you get, you see that you want to hold on to more of what you make, and production becomes a little more a bigger thing. But what I'm just offering to people that the values of capitalism are being negotiated, right? Not saying capitalism is a force for evil. Some say it's a force for good. I'm just saying whatever system of economic system that we're dealing with, which is what we're here today in the capitalism society, which has done a lot. People are saying that using people as tools, we're no longer accepting. Okay, if that's the case, what does that mean? It means number one, being number one may not be enough. It may not be what we're striving for. Maybe being number three is what we're striving for, as long as that we're number one with our people. And so that value shift is taking place for some leaders. That what is it? What does at the end of the day? What do I really want to accomplish? What do I want my shareholders, the board of directors, to see? Because if my shareholders and board of directors, investors say that at the end of the day, I want to grind people apart, is that where I want to be? And I do think it's a negotiating of values, centering oneself into what does it mean at the end of the day to be a leader that leaves a legacy. And if it means to be that I'm number two, I may be okay with that. To know that people who stand at my graveside have said that I was number one in their eyes. And I think that's the shift that we're probably seeing.
Now, there's a bit of an oxymoron in all of that, and maybe you can dispel that, because the leaders will be faced with the, should I say, conundrum that why would I want to be this to people that are never going to be loyal in the first place? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, why would I leap an ocean for people that won't even jump a paddle for me, knowing
Yeah,
that
it's true.
somebody comes in with a better offer, they're off to the next,
Yeah,
sort
it's
of
true.
employer. Now, how do leaders, operate this sort of delicate balance?
Yeah, the truth of the matter is recruiting is probably the most sunk cost that a lot of organizations would experience. And the idea of um, finding talent, retaining talent has become uh, a science and an art. Uh, and I don't blame people that why should I invest it? Because at the end of the day, all the energy you put in and they leave, it just seems like to be a loss. So there is a risk in that. What I just say to you, it is a risk to be the person that goes the extra mile. That is a risk. Uh, it's always been a risk. I think someone said. I think a very wise person, Jesus of Nazareth, said, going the extra mile is still the right thing to do. The question is, what are those values that you have? Because the truth of the matter is that our values won't always make us profitable in the immediate. It won't always make us profitable in the immediate. And the question is, do you have enough trust, dare I say faith, to understand that the values that I hold dear to me at somehow will pay dividends? And by the way, dividends don't always need to be dollars and cents. The dividends of a rich relationship that I have with the people that I have on my team could be enough. So I kid you not, I don't guarantee that being very value centered, ethical, and being a servant leader, these are all going to pay in the median. But I will say this, guaranteed, when we are our best selves, when no one's watching, when people do watch, we will be our best selves. You get that? Because when you practice being your best selves in private, no one's watching, you will naturally be your best selves in public. And I hold to that sort of adage that, character is who you are and people don't see you. Reputation is what people say about you when they do see you, right? And so that's what I would say to a leader. I think the final thing I probably would want to offer is that based on Maslow's hierarchy of need, one of the levels of need for a leader is self-actualization. That is one of the as we go up the whole pyramid, self-actualization is one of the needs. So I just say like this is part of you actualizing as yourself as a leader when you live by values, when you live by integrity, when you are demonstrating your ethics, you are self-actualizing. And I hope that's meeting an intrinsic need, even though it may not meet a monetary need at that moment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, money you could always make or lose, but character is something that once it's gone, it's gone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, I don't know, me being a marketer, we usually
Yeah,
approach it in this way where and maybe you can comment on that and see how that works. So within the framework of an organization or a business, if the leader has to understand A, what is their personal brand? B, what is
yeah.
their business brand? C, what is their product brand? And maybe D, what is their employer brand? How do people view them as an employer? And then the last one, investors, if that's part of what it is that they need, and people that are supporting the business or whatever stakeholders that are
Yeah.
needed. Maybe I don't know if you've come across that, or is that something of relevance when somebody is navigating who they ought to be when they're showing up in this space.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, character is one of those things that it doesn't show up acutely all the time. It's in sort of the substratum. It is very much subterranean. And whether you're in the marketing side, the sales side, when you are in finances or operations, logistics, you may argue that is not as important to compare to human resources. Again, I use that term just well subconsciously, but what I mean in terms of developing people. Yet, yet, I would offer that when we are, when we do have a lens where we put values and ethics and people first, those who are in leadership will make decisions in those particular functional areas of the business that you're describing in ways that will uh, maximize the talent while not grinding people to powder. Because what you're seeing, like the stats show, there's so many people feeling overwhelmed and burned out and running over capacity. Over capacity. At some point, we can't say, well, this is an issue of a lack of skills in marketing or finance. What do you mean? In every department, there's a lack of skills? Are you actually saying that every department there's a lack of skills? No. So what is it about then? It's decision making. It's judgment. It's being judicious. And that's an issue of character. To be able to be wise, have enough aplomness to say, no, we won't take this work now on because our people need some breath. They need some breather. And marketing, I have friends in that space, and you know how much pressure that is on to get ahead, get ahead, get ahead, and get those things out. Does it have to be that way? Oh, but we need to be first to market. We need everyone.
It's
Someone created a story that was important. That's needed. I would just argue that sometimes we need to check our stories and ask ourselves the very tough question: why, in these certain functions or department, do we run our people and grind them to powder and then spit them out and bring in next people. Is that the way that we want to do business? And again, I said that's not a skill-based question. That's an ethical character value-based question.
Absolutely. And I think it was Richard Branson, CEO of Virgin, that says he looks after his people because then that transfers to the actual profit
Exactly.
that the business has. Because can you imagine you're an airline and the air
Hmm.
hostess just throwing gnats at you like that just because they've been yelled at by their boss. So everything has a ripple effect. Everything has a real world sort of consequence. But you did mention stories that people tell
Yeah.
themselves, like some stories is it's always been done like this. People like us do things like this. And there were stories of how maybe Steve Jobs and Elon Musk were very famous at being the
Yeah.
people that chastises their people and things of that nature. What maybe are some misconceptions about workplace cultures that you might like to dispel that people actually hold as gospel?
Yeah. Workplace culture. Yeah, I would say the ends justify the means. Very that whole Machiavellian. That's what I think that's one of those myths. Well, maybe it was a myth at one point. Maybe industrial age, as I shared, that we didn't see people as human beings. We saw them as human doings. Now today, I think it is a myth. We know better. I would say that's one. I also I'm noticing as that accommodating is a threat to my productivity, right? We live in a world where we say that people who are disabled are this form of ableism that we don't care and moving on. We're discovering now, no, when we make space for those who uh, don't have quote unquote the ability or disabled, that that makes us better as a culture, as a set. And we also recognize that when we tap into the abilities of those who self-identify as being disabled, they bring some skills that we would shudder because we never thought, like the neurodiversity, the movement, a recognition that people have think differently. So I think that accommodation uh, costs us. We're seeing that that's no longer the case. It can be very much productive, and it's also uh, better not only for your bottom line, just but better as I told as a leader, self-actualizing. I think those are two things that I see. The other piece I probably will look at is I would say that I don't have time to lead from the front. I gotta lead from the behind. What do I mean by that? And so I'll paint a picture of in Canada we have geese. We call them Canadian geese.
Yeah, yeah.
Very, very polite as Canadians to call our geese Canadian geese. And if you ever watch Canadian geese and when they migrate south or fly, they fly in a V. It's very extraordinary. But in that V, if you ever notice, the geese take turns to lead. And when they get tired, they shift back and they're protected by the other geese. They lead from the front. It's important. They don't lead from the behind. Why I say this? I find that leaders want to build organizations by strictly being behind and delegating policies and delegating instruction order and barking it through their downline. That doesn't work, especially when your employees are hurting, especially when your employees are going through trauma, especially when your employees are going through crises. When there's a fire, Prosper, do you expect the fire chief to say, "Go on, boys, go handle it. I'll be back here in the fire hall and I'll be barking orders to you." What do you
Of
expect from
course,
the fire marshal?
you want him X in hand, and
Him or her? Yeah, him or her. They're down in there. Exactly. They're on the ground. They may not be exactly at every point because at some point you have to be judicious and knowing where everyone is, but they're down there. They're on the ground. They're on the ground. They lead from the front. When there was 9/11 in the US, the chiefs, fire chiefs, chiefs of police, they're on the ground. And I find that a lot of leaders, they want to lead from the ivory tower. They want to lead from behind. They want to lead through delegation. At some point, if you want people to know that you care, you got to lead from the front. But then, like, that takes so much time. I'm such a busy person. I got meetings by the meetings. But you get what? Your vision will never be latched on without you being in front. And that's one of the reasons when you had Steve Jobs, that's the reason when you they had those big Apple conferences and those leaders were out there on the stage, or Walmart, and they had those big conferences, or McDonald's. Why? It was an easy way for the leaders to get in front of everybody at the same time. This is how I'm going to lead from the front. I'm saying that's good, but when you take an extra mile is when you can walk the ground. And I learned this when I was working in manufacturing, and I worked in Daimler at one point, and I worked at tier one automotives, supplying cars or parts to the big three, we call it in North America: Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors. I found what was very powerful. They had this thing called management by walking, MBW. I find in industries that are non-automotive, I don't find the leaders lead by walking around, getting to know each other, getting to know the people. There was a show called Undercover Boss. I don't
Yes.
know if there's a you know it well, right? So then the theme where the the CEO usually would dress up as their one of the people on the ground, right? And for the maybe your viewers who may not have watched it, it's all about how can the leader know more about their organization in incognito, in disguise, and little that the people around them know that they're actually dealing with the leaders. The leaders who are in disguise, they hear things about the organization that they wouldn't hear otherwise, because their people who report to them up the line don't always tell them the truth, because they're afraid that the leader would respond negatively. And so to get through that noise in these undercover boss, these leaders come in disguise and they get onto the ground. They get on the ground and listen. They get to the truth. I remember saying that to one CEO. He was asking me, Denley, I want you to tell me what's going on, because I was leading an organization about building community. He said, I want you to tell me what's going on in the organization. And I said, whoa, James, you just call him James. James, you have leaders that report to you, give you data and all this stuff. Why would you want me, little me, who don't report to you? I'm not in the C-suite. Why would you want me to tell you what's going on in your organization? He said, my people will varnish the data. You will tell me the truth
Don't only tell me
because
what I
you're on
want
the
to
ground.
hear.
Yeah, because you're on the ground. I want to know that. And that never left me. And so the work that I do to just to now ground in terms of applying what I do, I help leaders get to the ground. I encourage leaders that when we do cultural work, it's not enough to be in the ivory tower. You need to get to the ground. Well, I got surveys. Let that be. And I said, that's a cop out, man. That's being lazy. I'm not saying surveys are bad, but you want to layer it with the gut, the qualitative. You get there, you get a feel. And when you do that, and the people know you, they respect you, they hear
Mm,
you because you're on the ground. And that's why you saw Undercover Boss, how people were so appreciative. And I bet you're more loyal because they said, you took the time to get on the ground and get to know me. Guess what? I'm going to, I'm going to take the time to get to know your company. And I think that's a powerful truth. And so that's the philosophy I use in my leadership to get people on the ground, as close to the ground as possible, because you're going to build more loyalty. You'll lead to the front, you get more trust. You lead from the back, you get a lot of more cracks. Simple as that.
absolutely. I like that because then obviously when people feel seen and heard, they
Hmm.
obviously appreciate that because maybe elsewhere they're not being seen or heard, maybe their community, their church, or their family even. doesn't even notice they're there on Thanksgiving and things of that nature. Now, for
Hmm.
leaders that are probably listening to this and that are ready to improve, maybe their workplace and culture, what would be the best way that they can get a hold of you, Danley, just to maybe get more of your insights and maybe get started on their journey to lead from the front?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Prosper. And I mean, I'm on the various platforms, but I would probably say my best platform that you can reach me, I'm readily on and engaging would be LinkedIn. So you can look up for my handle, Denley McIntosh. Uh, you can also, if you say, "Hey, I don't want to engage you as of yet. I want to kind of hear more of your stuff." I have the Coach's Corner. It's a podcast I do, and it puts some of those reflections that I've just shared and then some. That's one way. I'm on Spotify and Apple. So the Coach's Corner is another way, and you may use that as a springboard to get a hold of me. In addition, LinkedIn, or you can reach me via email at hello@renewiq.ca. That's HELLO at RENEWIQ.ca. And so those are what are the key ways. I mean, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads, but I would say those three are probably, or at least especially LinkedIn is probably the platform I am at home in.
Absolutely. I will definitely put those links in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey. Now, as you would know,
Hmm.
no two fingers on the same hand are of the same height, and so
Yeah.
many different organizations are coming in. Some of them are just predominantly working on the internet, and some are obviously in a position where it's a manufacturing plant and people can walk the floor, so to speak. What sort of advice have you got for maybe remote leaders that cannot proverbially walk the floor?
Yeah, you know what? As a leader, you can abdicate many things, but you can't abdicate care.
Mm.
Um, uh, and one of the an organization they run for a group of professionals who are public servants, and um, one of the things I tell my team that we cannot abdicate the power of the one-on-one. And I know people say that takes a lot of work to talk to hundreds of people. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what comes with leadership.
Mm.
Leadership comes with some sacrifice. It comes where you really want to go to bed badly, but there's one more email that you got to reach out to, especially if someone who lost a loved one. They're expecting you to call. And even if they don't expect you to call, when you do call, they are surprised that you reached out and
Right.
you touched them in a way. As a remote leader, what does that mean? It means that the power of the telephone is still powerful. It hasn't been used in a while because we figured that the email or the chat are the best ways. I don't know. Some people use their telephones when it comes to the work because it seems so antiquated. But there's something powerful when you pick up the phone and you call someone and say, "Hey, how are you doing? I've been thinking about you." Not only have I been thinking about you, not because you missed a deadline or you got work. How's your mother? How's your brother? How's your son? How's your daughter? Those sort of encounters, those one-on-one encounters, are indispensable as a leader. You have to make the one-on-one. But there's thousands of people. Yeah, there is. So get going. Make a list. You don't have to talk to them every day. You don't have to talk to them twice a month or whatever, but make it your point to hit as many people in your organization one-on-one by you calling them, say, "Hey, it's Denley. Yeah, I'm the CEO, but I heard that you lost someone. Yeah, I'm the CEO, but I heard that your son, your daughter had Great game. Yeah, I'm the CEO. I just wanted to check in on you and see how things are. I recognize it's been 10 years since you've been working for me. It's so powerful. I can't tell you. I've been told so many times, whoa, you actually reached out to me? Yeah, why wouldn't I? You would be busy. Ah, mm, see?
Because nobody
Distinguish it.
does that. It really makes a big difference. Wow. Now, then, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
this is something that is very topical, and there's so many
Mm,
layers and angles to it. But there's constant change that's coming in. There's the advent of AI, and I'm thinking it's
yeah.
going to disrupt the way people communicate and do things of that nature. What sort of predictions have you got in the trends that might be coming up in terms of workplace culture, and what should people maybe be on the lookout for?
Yeah, you know what? I would say there's going to be a renaissance period. What's old become new again? Is that what they're saying? What I mean with AI, the ethical piece, like there's a creative piece, and I know there are people talk about integrated thinking that some of the things that AI does, the human person would do better in terms of the artistic and the creativity, the sort of a little more high level thinking.
Right.
But I will also say the values and the ethics, that is not something you can get from facts alone, because facts, the difference between science and religion in one sense is that science deals with facts, religion deals with meaning of the facts. Science can't give you meaning of those facts. And if science is what helps build out AI, guess what? AI can't give you meaning of those facts too. Now,
Mm.
AI will glean from what other people have said what those facts are. But at the end of the day, uh, the ability to be value centered, the ability to know who you are, the ability to know what it means to do community and build identity. I think we will become more sharper at that, I would hope, to make the most of AI, because AI can't do that for us. We must do that for ourselves. And I think then AI would be better servants than rulers in that case.
Absolutely, I quite like that. And this is where it puts you in a very unique position because you're middle brained, right? You
Yeah.
understand the arts and you can understand, I mean, the science and then the arts part of it. It makes sense of, the whole thing together there. So, man, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, we could have gone on and on, but
It
as you
could, yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, there's one thing that I noticed about while I was, looking you up. You always talk about celebrating small wins or small victories. Can you maybe
Yeah.
allude a little bit to that and how that can actually then help? Because this is such a big pie, but I think if you want to eat an elephant, you just do it one bite at a time.
Yeah, yeah. Then assuming that your all your listeners are carnivores, so that means that maybe if they're not, they're probably biting one leaf at a time, right? Or one. uh, so yeah, when I talk about small victories, and yet it referring to a post and also a podcast, it dawned on me that part of the way that we overcome some of our challenges is to um, be okay to pat yourself on the back when you did something that you felt said, yeah, that's worth tapping myself on the back for. It may be not a big deal, but it may be a big deal to you. I say getting up in the morning and making up your bed, that could be a big deal to you. The ability to go and take a walk around the street, um, and decompress because you normally don't know, that could be a big deal for you. Because each of those incremental successes are part of, I live in Canada, so snow is part of our lexicon here, that it starts to, you roll it and starts to get bigger and bigger. You have a bigger snowball and have an avalanche. In fact, it's called the snowball effect. And that principle is used in for a lot of financial advisors or maybe planners. They use this idea of small victories or the snowball effect. to get people out of debt. So the notion, when you listen to the podcast, there is signs on that. There's two ways that you can attack a particular situation when it comes to police finance. And so I've been in finance a little bit, so I can at least speak with some authority. So I have not shared that, but I do have some knowledge in that area. And so one of the ways that you can come out of a particular debt situation is by attacking the highest interest rate products first on your credit card or your loans. You pay that off first. Why? Because they're the ones that accrue more interest. So logically, you do that. But for some people, that seems very, very daunting. And in fact, may actually give up because they don't have the gusto to keep going. So the alternative is to start with the lowest interest first, the easiest ones, the small victories, and then build yourself up to the larger interest. You said, why would you do that? Why would you want to build more interest because you're attacking the smaller interest? It's because emotionally pays more dividends. So when I pay down the smaller credit card first and then work myself to the bigger one, I feel good that I'm actually accomplishing. I feel better and I feel better and I feel better. And then all of a sudden I'm knocking off the bigger ones because I built up the intestinal fortitude, the intrinsic resilience to get through. And that's the same for some things at work. Sometimes at work, it may be better to do the things that, dare I say, not really important to the boss, but it's important to you because emotionally it gets you in the game to do the things that the boss wants to do. But if you jump to do the thing what the boss wants you to do immediately, you may not actually do it to the way you want because you're not emotionally there yet. Because you're trying to do a big victory without getting the small victories first. That's what I mean by that.
I like that. I like that. And when you keep doing that, it becomes like an outfit, every little
Mm-hmm.
victory becomes like an accessory and you accessorize
That's
yourself
right.
because no complete outfit would be sound if it doesn't come with the accessories that make it a whole piece. Now, this was a powerful conversation, Danny. I mean, your story, your experience in this space really needed an even bigger platform. So I really thank you so much for taking the time to, share your insights with us. I mean, we're celebrating small victories here, so small podcasts will probably lead you to a bigger audience, and also
Yeah.
in us navigating the waves of this workplace culture phenomenon. I think your insights just remind us that there's the true transformation begins with intention and empathy, and from there you become like the Canadian goose. You know what I mean? Anyone can now take the lead, but you got to do it from the front. So I'm really excited about what the audience are going to take from this particular show today. And thank you once again.
Well, thank you, Prosper. Thank you for your time, and I wish you and I much success what you're doing, and continue to enrich your audience. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching right now, if this episode resonated with you, I encourage you, don't just keep this to yourself. Send this to your leader. Let them have an understanding of what it actually means to be a holistic leader, because some of them are just in these positions, as we have established, where they had that leadership bestowed on them, but they were not quite ready. And I think Denley could be that one person that, even if they're listening to his podcast, The Culture Corner, they might pick up a few insights or two. Or if they're brave enough, they can bring him into the V formation, and he can also be part of that migration that every culture is experiencing right now. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you never miss out an episode on the Online Prosperity Show. I think the next episode that you'll be watching is also about leadership. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I want you to remember that transformation with a simple step is actually the beginning of the bigger changes that we want to make. Bye for now.